Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar titled Your Journey to IVDR Certification, a Roadmap to the 2022 deadline. My name's Freddie, and I'm just going to run through a few of the housekeeping rules with you before we get started. So we will have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar. You'll see the little box down towards the bottom of your screen. That is for any questions that you want to send our way. If you do want to send them in before the end, that's fine. I'll make sure they're all correlated and answered later. If there are any questions that any of our experts can't give you an answer to there and then, we'll make sure we'll get that emailed over to you. You'll also see a little chat box down at the bottom of your screen. If you've got any technical difficulties or you want to get my attention or anything during the webinar, if you just pop your message in there, and then that will it'll send it over to me, and then I'll get that sorted. You will receive a copy of this webinar, the recorded copy with the slides. We'll try and get that out to you as soon as possible. Hopefully at the beginning of next week we should be able to get that. We're joined today by, we've got Kelly, Sharon and Maddie who are going to be presenting. So if I can ask Rachel to move us to the next slide, please. So on the webinar, we're going to go through the new EU 2017-746 IVDR Overview. We're going to discuss the training programs that we offer. We're going to go through our certification portfolio offerings to all the medical device industries. And then, as I said, at the end, we'll have a little Q&A session. Next slide, please. I'll now hand you over to Sharon, and she'll just give you a quick bio of herself. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Freddie. Good morning, everybody. I'm Sharon Williams. I'm the Global Product Manager for IVDR and also the UK CA Medical Devices Certification Manager here in the UK. I've been with SGS and other notified bodies for over 20 years now. So my experience covers auditing, training and managing global accreditations and designations. So I've got experience with the ISO 13485 standard over the years, the IVDD 9879 EC, the new EU regulation, and the very new UK conformity assessment scheme as well. So, and obviously before joining SGS, I worked in the IVD industry as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelly Windsor and I head up the UK Training Academy. I've worked in training for over 20 years now, and my key speciality is in designing and delivering training that meets the needs of organisations in a variety of sectors. My particular areas of expertise include undertaking training needs analysis that incorporate organisational and compliance requirements, developing training courses that deliver both knowledge and skills, supporting organisations to develop and maintain compliance with both internal and external requirements, and importantly, ensuring that training is engaging, informative and enjoyable.
Hello, thank you, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. I am Maddie. I am the UK ISO 13485 Product Manager. Have had over 15 years of experience with reputed notified bodies as a third-party regulatory auditing, dedicated in ISO 13485, MDD, MDSAP, and currently perform technical file reviews and conducts audits for MDD, and then approved MDR technical file reviewer as well as on-site auditor. Also, I have had exposure to management roles such as head of compliance and risk and operations for other bodies, and currently perform the role of ISO 13485 product manager. Thank you.
Okay, we'd like to start the webinar now, so I will start first and then hand over to my colleagues in a little bit. So the webinar focus this morning is on a brief overview of the IVDR and looking at that in terms of the first step in your journey to regulatory compliance. Next slide, please. So let's start at the beginning, really. The IVD regulation EU 2017-746 entered into force on the 26th of May 2017, and that began a 5-year transition period to replace the current IVD directive in the EU. After the transition period, then the EU IVDR will be the applicable regulation, although devices that are already CE marked will have a small further grace period. We'll have a look at the timescales in a little bit more detail next. So what is the EU IVDR? It's essentially the new EU regulatory framework that, as I said, replaces the current IVD directive. It will act in the same way to allow CE marking of IVD devices and give access, therefore, to the EU market. However, it's important to understand that this is not just a simple replacement, and the new EU IVDR represents a significant increase to the regulatory requirements for all IVD devices. The most obvious and the most major change is that of classification for IVD devices. This single regulatory change will mean a huge impact on IVD devices placed on the EU market that require notified body certification in order to put the CE mark on the device. It's estimated that this will move from the current about 20% of devices that need notified body certification to more like 80% of devices to allow them to get access to the EU market. This fourfold increase obviously means that a lot more IVD manufacturers are going to need notified body certification than they did previously to be able to continue to CE mark and place their products on the market. So these substantial changes also aim to bring the IVD regulation into line with the new medical devices regulation, the MDR. Significant amounts of the guidance and the legal decisions previously issued by the EU Commission over the lifetime of the IVD directive have now been directly incorporated into the IVDR, making it part of the overall requirements for IVD devices. Next slide, please. I think it's sensible to explain the timelines that we're working with here under the new EU IVDR. The first row of red outline boxes with dates in apply to IVD directive certificates. So from 26th of May 2017 to 25th of May 2022, this gives us that 5-year transition period from when the IVDR came into force until its final date of application. So this means that certificates issued under the IVD directive are still valid and can be used. From 26th of May 2022 to 25th of May 2024, this extra 2 years means that IVD directive certificates issued before the May 2022 deadline are still valid and will be valid until their expiry date, or until 25th of May 2024 is reached, well, whichever comes first, provided that there are no significant changes to the devices. So the key point is that no new IVD directive certificates can be issued after 26th of May 22. 26th of May 2024 to May 2025, IVD certificates, IVD directive certificates are no longer valid. However, this final year allows for any IVD devices that are already on the market in the supply chain can still be made available. So this is really a final runoff period. The next line down, the purple outline boxes, is for certificates issued under the IVD regulations. Now, this can happen in parallel during the transition period, but cannot be for the same device. And after the 25th of May 2024, only IVDR certified devices can be placed on the market. With the changing classification that I just mentioned, the 26th of May 2022 is a key date for manufacturers that don't currently need notified body certification to CE mark under the IVD directive. So in other words, they're self-declaring. If their IVD devices now fall with the new classifications into Class B or Class C or even Class D potentially under the IVDR, that means from 26th of May 22, they will need to look at IVDR certification. Those products didn't have or don't currently have notified body certification, so there can be no further grace period until 2024. Next slide, please. So I want to look now at an overview of some of the key requirements of the new EU IVDR. As I've mentioned, it not only covers all of the, obviously, the current regulatory requirements of the current IVD directive, but then it significantly increases the level of compliance needed. And it also introduces a number of new obligations. As a brief overview of some of these key points, although there are lots of others, I've just highlighted these 8 areas in particular. Firstly, the EU IVDR introduces new requirements for unique device identification, or UDI. And for IVDs, this will apply across basic device types, specific device models, and packaging information. This enhanced traceability will need to build upon what's already established in your ISO 13485 quality system. As I've mentioned already, the biggest change for IVD devices will be the classifications applied. Currently, with the directive, we have a specific rigid list system where a named device type is given in Annex 2 List A or List B. So, for example, an IVD for determining the cancer marker PSA, which is List B, or it's identified as a self-test device for lay use, or if it falls in none of those 3 categories, it's just a general IVD. Under the EU IVDR, there are risk-based classification rules now. So similar in principle to those that have already been applied to medical devices. And this will result in classification as either Class A, Class B, Class C, or Class D. And those are increasing in risk classification. This means that, for example, under the new IVDR Rule 3, all IVDs intended to be used for screening, diagnosing, or staging of cancer will all be Class C. So obviously, that explains the big change in the number of IVD devices that are going to need notified body intervention in the future. In terms of significantly increased requirements in comparison to the IVD directive, the new IVDR has much more rigorous requirements for post-market surveillance, and now this is now identified and forms part of the technical documentation for each device, and the need for vigilance reporting. The new EUDAMED database will allow competent authorities across the EU to share information. Similarly, the existing requirements for performance evaluation of IVD devices is greatly enhanced under IVDR. And for the first time, sort of definitively incorporates the concepts of not just analytical performance, but clinical performance, as well as scientific validity that the manufacturer has to be able to support in their technical documentation. For the higher risk devices in particular, there are also requirements for ongoing review of that performance evaluation and the update of the evaluation, and this links to providing information then on the continued performance of the device to the users, to the regulators. This is emphasized in the need for more rigorous clinical evidence for all IVD devices. This means that the clinical evidence presented has to scientifically demonstrate that the intended clinical benefits, the benefits of safety of the IVD will be achieved according to the state of the art in medicine. This then links to the use of common specifications, which is effectively the new name for the CTS that we had under the IVD directive. These will define the expected state of the art for devices. And while the old IVD CTS will be amongst the first to be updated and reissued, the EU's work programme aims to provide many more of these CSs that the manufacturers will need to work to. A brand new requirement for EU IVDR is that for a specific role within the manufacturer and also the authorised representative of a named person responsible for regulatory compliance, or PRRC. This new function has defined responsibilities according to the EU IVDR. One final important point to raise is that there will be no grandfathering. By this, I mean the new IVDR requires that all currently IVD directive certified devices will need to be recertified under the new IVDR. So there's no automatic recognition of compliance due to previous compliance with the old regulation. And obviously this has particular consequences for IVD devices that are currently self-declared under the directive. So hence pointing this out. Next slide, please. So taking a first step approach, the standard ISO 13485 is primarily focused as a quality management system for IVDs and medical device manufacturers. Where are we? It encompasses not just primarily the regulatory compliance aspects, but it also focuses on the key processes that mean manufacturers can plan and achieve product realization, and as aimed directly at manufacturers of IVD devices and other related IVD organizations as well. A major concept is therefore applying risk management principles throughout the product realization process, which should be used to identify and address safety issues, which is the most obvious aspect of IVD device regulation, resulting in safe products. It's important that organizations adequately document their risk management methods and outputs, including ones outside of those just associated with the with the design of the product itself. Risk management processes need to cover the entire product realization phase. So your risk analysis should identify the harms associated with the critical processes, estimating their risks, identifying actions that mitigate those risks to an acceptable residual level. This isn't a static process, but one that needs to be continually reviewed and updated in light of current information on the devices and on the realization process. Another key process would be validation. And validation of the processes for production and service provision is defined in ISO 13485 in clause 7.5.6. Validation allows the organization to demonstrate the ability of processes to achieve the planned results consistently. So where a process output can't be verified by subsequent measuring or monitoring, and importantly, that where deficiencies would only be found once it's actually put into use. Documented procedures and records are needed that include the process acceptance criteria, the methods, analysis, personnel and equipment qualification, the defined revalidation and control of changes. So this is much more prescriptive and detailed in ISO 13485 because of the criticality of such processes for IVDs and medical devices for their safety. So classic examples would be things like sterilization or lyophilization processes. Another vital regulatory requirement is for effective product traceability and a recall system. ISO 13485 defines this in terms of documented processes and records for devices that ensure traceability. This is obviously at its very highest level for products such as implantable medical devices, of course, but this requirement does apply to IVDs. And with the upcoming changes to the EU IVDR, introduction of the unique device identification, the UDI system, this will be one of the significant step changes really in the horizon. The ability to recall faulty devices from the market is obviously linked directly to regulatory requirements. Now, product and process improvement is another aspect of ISO 13485 clauses on management analysis and improvement, and these are very much interrelated. As part of risk management, there needs to be a review of feedback on the use and the performance of the regulated IVD devices in the marketplace, and from ongoing conformity assessment activities by your notified body, as well as internal input. So issues requiring corrective or preventive actions need to ensure the controlled improvement of devices and processes to ensure their continued regulatory compliance. So just to give you a taste, these are some of the key areas that the 13485 standard addresses. And together, these requirements and the rest of the requirement clauses in the standard mean that appropriate controls are established and documented for producing the products or providing services throughout the life cycle of the IVD device. This is important for then demonstrating the compliance with the statutory and regulatory obligations identified by the organisation, that they have addressed them and they've met them in a quality system and then actually implemented them for their devices or services. Next slide, please. So we've had a very brief look at what's coming up under the EU IVDR in the near future and an introduction to the principal areas of ISO 13485, and hopefully been able to show how they're very much focused on IVD and medical devices organisations. I hope this then leads sensibly into the idea that accredited ISO 13485 certification from SGS is really that first step on the regulatory compliance journey and lays the foundations for meeting your future regulatory obligations under the IVDR. So compliance with ISO 13485 2016 can help IVD medical device organisations prepare for the new IVD regulations, which, as I've mentioned, now become mandatory in 2022. After that date of 26th of May 2022, access to the EU market will start to require CE marking under the IVDR, and that's for new devices. It will also impact those devices that previously were not certified by a notified body under the IVD directive. So IVDR does represent a huge change in the EU regulatory landscape, but the phrase that scaling any mountain starts with the first few steps is really quite applicable. ISO 13485 not only gives recognized QMS compliance, but it's worth highlighting that any company that already has a basic 9001 quality system or even an uncertified quality system, but that works to document and define the processes that they need to follow to provide products or services, is already off the starting blocks. In many cases, looking back at the ISO 13485 areas that I discussed just now, there are already going to be processes in place and functioning for most IVD companies for them to do what they need to do. The step approach really is to identify the potential gaps to achieve ISO 13485 certification, and then make use of SGS as an accredited certification body to ensure you're compliant, or through our assessment, identify where you are not, and then allows obviously the organization to improve and achieve the end goal of certification against 13485. And this then becomes the first step in your journey towards achieving future compliance to the new EU IVDR. So thank you for your attention. Hopefully I've covered some useful points. I'm now going to hand you on to Kelly to talk about SGS training. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. As mentioned earlier, I'm Kelly Windsor, and I'm going to talk you through the training programs that SGS have developed to help organisations navigate through the complex IVDR landscape as outlined by Sharon. But firstly, I'd just like to give you a brief overview of the UK Academy. We've been up and running for over 10 years, and whilst our main operational sites are in the UK, because of the way we're set up and the use of virtual learning, our courses are delivered all across the world. Many of our courses are CQI IRCA accredited and are all developed by our global development team. And this team comprises of both industry and training experts. We have a strong track record in training delivery, and we use a wide variety of teaching methods to ensure our training is accessible. Pricing at SGS is competitive, and it's always benchmarked against our competitors. And we provide complete transparency in our pricing structure, which I'll outline later in this presentation. We also have a wide range of provision, and we're always developing and updating our courses to ensure the materials both meet sector requirements and reflect current legislation. Next slide, please. So this slide outlines the courses that we currently have in place for IVDR. So the introduction to IVDR e-learning is a 1-hour course which provides an overview of the new regulation, the key changes you need to be aware of, and what IVDR means in practice. IVDR senior management briefings are ordinarily half-day in-house courses that provide senior team with an overview of IVDR requirements and more specifically their responsibilities. The ISO 13485 introduction is a 1-day course, provides individuals with awareness of the standard, and is suitable for anyone in the organisation that will be involved in implementation at any level. The ISO 13485 internal auditor is delivered across 2 days and is suitable for anyone that will be undertaking internal audits in the organisation. The ISO 13485 lead auditor course is delivered across 5 days and provides the knowledge and skills required to perform first, second and third party, including supplier audits of QMS against ISO 13485. The 1-day ISO 14971 risk management introduction provides a comprehensive introduction to the key elements of risk management and gives individuals a practical foundation in the relationship between risk management, the regulatory requirements, and their quality system. The 1-day QMS software validation course provides the knowledge required to implement an ISO 80002 compliant software validation process. The 2-day course on implementation of IVDR CE marking is primarily suitable for managers and the responsible person, and this provides a detailed understanding of how to implement the new regulations. The technical documentation of IVD's course is delivered in 1 day and provides a practical understanding of how to complete and quality assure the necessary technical documentation. The IVDR supply chain management 1-day course provides guidance on how to successfully manage supply chains and ensure compliance with the new IVDR regulations. The 1-day role of the IVDR responsible person course introduces the new role and provides a detailed understanding of what is required. And finally, the 1-day introduction to UK CA marking will provide individuals with an awareness of the marking programme and is suitable for anyone in the organisation that will be involved in the process. These courses can be delivered as either open courses or in-house. Our open courses will include attendees from different organisations, and in-house are delivered to specific organisations. All of these can be completed as standalone courses, but we have put together two pathways for organisations and the IVDR responsible person, which I'll outline in the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. So the organisation pathway comprises of 6 courses. We've got the Introduction to IVDR e-learning, which is recommended for all employees, the Senior Management Briefing for the senior team, the ISO 13485 Introduction for those involved in implementation, the ISO 13485 Internal Auditor for the management team and internal auditors, the ISO 13485 Lead Auditor for managers and especially quality and appointed auditors, and then the IVDR Supply Chain Management for any relevant managers. This pathway would be delivered to groups of 4 to 12 individuals, and we can deliver this online using our virtual platform, at an organisation's premises, or at pre-agreed training venues. One key benefit of the in-house courses is that the provision is tailored to the organisation to ensure it's contextualised and relevant. And a further benefit is the ability for organisations to choose their own delivery dates, which makes the operational planning a lot more straightforward. The in-house courses are very cost effective, and importantly, they offer the opportunity for peer learning and are a good step in developing team relationships. Next slide, please. So the IVDR Responsible Person Passport consists of 9 courses which have been developed to ensure a full understanding of the role of the responsible person and provide the skills and knowledge needed to fulfil this new role. So the pathway includes the role of the IVDR responsible person, ISO 13485 Introduction and Lead Auditor, technical documentation of IVD course, the implementation of IVDR CE marking, ISO 14971 Risk Management Introduction, QMS software validation, IVDR Supply Chain Management, and an introduction to the UK CA marking. All of these courses can be completed in any order, and both open and in-house courses are available. And once the individual has completed all 9 courses, they will then be certificated with the responsible person passport. Next slide, please. So, as outlined earlier, the SGS Academy has transparent prices, and these are based on fixed rates for the course duration. I won't go through them all, but as you can see from the slide, we charge £895 for a 1-day open course and £3,250 for a 1-day in-house. And these increase to £3,300 for the 5-day open course and £12,000 for in-house. Our e-learning courses are priced at £134 per person and can be accessed for 12 months following purchase. It's also worth noting that these prices have been favourably benchmarked against our competitors. SGS have also introduced 2 discount structures for IVDR. Firstly, we offer a 20% discount on organisations and individuals purchasing one of the 2 pathways. And as a thank you for joining us today, we will offer a 15% discount on all of our individual courses. Next slide, please. And I would like to finish by going through why you should use the SGS Academy to deliver your training. So firstly, our tutors, they're all IVDR specialists and they still actively audit within the sector, which ensures their knowledge is current and relevant. They are all also experienced trainers who apply innovative teaching techniques to ensure the training is engaging and adapted to different learning styles. And very importantly, they are approachable and supportive. Our training delivery is structured and delivered as e-learning online and in the classroom. And as mentioned previously, the courses are delivered globally and promote peer-to-peer learning. Our provision is flexible, with open courses planned in advance and the ability for organisations to choose dates from the in-house courses. Support is in place from an academy specialist for the whole learner journey, right from selecting the first course to post-course follow-up to ensure satisfaction. And SGS prides itself on its excellent quality and governance arrangements. Our courses are regularly observed, independently audited, and in 2020, 98% of delegates rated our courses as good or better. And finally, SGS is a brand you can trust. Thank you for listening. I'm now going to hand over to Maddie, who will talk to you about SGS certification.
Thank you, Kelly. Following slides will provide you information of the types of certification services that SGS offer to support medical device industry meet their customer and global regulatory requirements. Next slide, please. SGS has the combined knowledge and experience to help you bring your medical devices to the market. Our active participation in working groups set by EU Commission and competent authorities gives us the latest regulatory knowledge and understanding of relevant regulations and how they are applied to your business and scope of activities. Our global network of offices ensure that wherever your company or manufacturing is based, certification can be achieved effectively and efficiently. We currently have the following services available with a variety of delivery options, such as on-site audits, remote technical file assessments, partial remote auditing. A typical time frame from application to certification is around 6 months. Next slide, please. We have current MDD certification 9342 EEC for the options including Annex 2, Annex 5, and Annex 6, and comprise on-site audits and review of technical documentation. Usually, our on-site audits combine ISO 13485 and MDD. However, we no longer accept new applications as we are in our final stages of migrating to EU MDR. Sharon have provided in-depth of the IVD, so I would move on to the ISO 13485. UCAS accreditation and our close links with EU Commission and competent authorities make us a natural partner for medical device regulatory certification. Regardless of your organization size, type, role, or number of locations, whether you are a legal manufacturer, contract manufacturer, sterilization service provider, calibration or installation service provider, or a distributor, are you involved in one or more stages of the life cycle of a medical device, SGS has got UCAS accreditation, all but for active implantable devices. Next slide, please. Since 1st January 2019, Health Canada announced that MDSAP as the sole mechanism for manufacturers to demonstrate compliance with QMS requirements of medical devices. It replaced the SWILE CAMCAS program. SGS has approval for as a medical auditing organization for MDSAP by MDSAP Regulatory Authority Council. The UKCA mark, SGS has got designated by MHRA to provide UKCA services, typically for Annex 2, Annex 5, and Annex 6. For 510K is a pre-market submission made to the FDA to demonstrate that the device to be marketed is substantially equivalent to a legally marketed device. SGS has received US FDA approval as a third-party reviewer for medical devices, thus help shorten the process to get your 510K medical device clearance through pre-market notification. A typical workflow will be SGS reviews files from the client organization for a 510K submission, and SGS submits its recommendation and documentation to FDA. FDA reviews and makes a final decision. FDA informs SGS of its decision, and we in turn inform the client of the final decision. Next slide, please. The EU MDR, the medical device manufacturers of Class 1 sterile measuring reusable Class 2A, 2B, and 3 devices must obtain CE marking MDR 2017-745 from a designated notified body prior to placing the devices in the EU market. While our SGS Finland notified body is already designated for MDR, SGS Belgium is in the final stages of designation. Once we obtain our successful MDR designation, we will be finalizing our IVDR designation via our SGS Belgium notified body. Next slide, please. This slide provides you the link to view the scopes of approval of SGS as a certification body, as a notification body, as an auditing organization, and third-party service provider. SGS strongly believe that implementing all above regulatory certification documentation should not result in excessive bureaucracy, paperwork, lack of flexibility, nor prevent innovation, nor an unreasonable financial burden. Our complete team at SGS wish our certified clients to succeed at every stage of their business, and we take pride in our meaningful, sustainable relationship. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much for that, guys. We've had a few questions come in, so I will move straight on to them. We've had one. Would it be possible to go over the IVDR timescales again, please? What is the difference between the red and the blue bar timelines? Just one of the presenters want to answer this one, please.
Thank you, Freddie. Apologies, I was on mute.
It's all right.
It's going to happen at some point. Okay, so going back to the diagram, the red boxes represent the key dates for the IVD directive certification. Whereas the purple blocks underneath is the IVDR certification. So the first box from 2017 to 22, that's the 5-year transition period. So at that point, there's the overlap between the IVD directive and the IVD regulations. So there can still be certificates issued to IVD directive, and at the same time, there can be new certificates issued to IVDR, but not for the same devices. So that overlap period, the transition period, is when is literally the overlap between the old directive and the new regulation. So the other parts in the top bar, the red boxes, the next box along shows where products that have got IVD directive certification, they can still go onto the market. So there can't be any new IVD directive certificates, but devices that are CE marked with an IVD directive certificate can still be on the market. They can still be sold as long as there's no changes to those devices. And then the very last box is the only way that a new product can be placed on the market is with an IVDR certificate, but there's a runoff period for those last few devices that are certified under the directive. Once, if they're already sold, they're already on the market, then they can continue. 2025 then is the absolute cutoff for anything that was CE marked under the directive.
Brilliant. Cheers for that, Sharon. We've got another question here. When do we expect to be approved as an IVDR notified body? think that might be one for you, Maddie, maybe.
We are for the MDR certification. We are in our final stages of designation. So our cutoff date for IVDR is May 2022, and we are very confident that we will be getting it by the deadline.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Since SGS is a notified body in the UK and will be in Belgium, can we provide consulting for the implementation of the regulation?
I can take that one. Even as a notified body under the directives, the old directives, and any notified body is not allowed to provide consultancy services. With the new EU regulations, MDR and IVDR, this is increased even more. So not only the actual bodies, the SGS bodies that are designated themselves, but basically any within the SGS group of notified bodies, we cannot do consultancy.
Brilliant, thanks Sharon. Self-certified IVDD are valid for 2 years. In the regulation, IVD self-certification has no term. Does this mean that they are not valid after May 2022, or they will expire on the stated certificate expiry date?
I'm not sure if I've understood the question properly. The key with under the IVD directive, those products that don't fall into list A or list B or are self-test devices, all of which need notified body certification. Any device that's outside of those is classed as a general IVD. So to get the CE marking, the manufacturer is making a declaration of conformity. So effectively is self-declaring that the product, the device can be CE marked. So there is no certificate, and that's really the issue. So that come May 2022, the requirement then is the date of application for the IVD regulation, the IVDR, takes place. So those devices then to go onto the market need to have CE marking that's in line with that regulation, because that's now the regulation that takes place. And they don't have notified body certification to have that grace period. So they will need to then comply with IVDR.
Brilliant, cheers Sharon. I've got another one here. Will the IVDR date of application be postponed as the MDR one was?
That's a very good question. I would say it's impossible for us to predict the future. And it definitely applies to this area of the regulations. So all of the EU Commission, the working group meetings that I've attended in really the last year, the EU Commission has been very clear in their opinion that the date of application for the IVDR is still sufficiently far away, and that the work items required for the new IVDR to function are progressing as expected. They're on track. So at the moment, there's no intention of postponing that date of application like they did do with the MDR, or at the moment, there's no discussion on an additional grace period for specific devices, which again, they did under the MDR. I know that industry associations and notified bodies as well have been in discussion and looking at this to be looked at in a sensible timescale if they do need to postpone it. But at present, there is nothing to the Commission's line is that there is no need to postpone it. So I think for manufacturers, they need to take the sensible consideration that that's the date that they're working to.
Oh, brilliant, cheers Sharon. I've got another one here. What does the May 2022 date mean for manufacturers of general IVDs? Will there be a further grace period?
I think that's the same question as I've just answered, really. So no, at the moment it has been raised in the discussions with the EU Commission, but at the moment there is no decision.
Brilliant, thank you. Can I transfer from my current notified body to SGS? What are the basic requirements?
Freddie, probably I can answer this. Yes, you can. Basically, the scope of designation has to complement your devices, and but in a practical sense, the certificate has to be valid at the time of transfer, and there should not be any major non-conformities pending for correction, and there should not be a recertification in the pipeline in a month or so. So we can't transfer and then have a recertification. So it is possible, yes. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Will there be any changes or difference on scope of designation between MDD, MDR, and IVD and IVDR?
Do you want me to take that one, Maddie? I think I presume you mean in terms of SGS.
Yes, yes.
So for the designation that, as I said, SGS Finland has already got designation to MDR for a very specific scope. SGS Belgium, which is our main global notified body, that will shortly be designated. We're in the very final stages for that at the moment, and I think that is virtually the same scope as we had previously as a notified body under the directive. There's a couple of very specific technical areas that we've decided not to cover, very, very limited areas. For IVD, moving from IVD to IVDR, at the moment that's still progressing, so we're still looking at the designation process for that. It's likely that the scope may be slightly less than we had under IVDD, because we're looking to focus very much on some specific areas, but then the intention is always to expand the scope so that we have the full scope for both regulations.
Okay. Had another one come through. Are there any requirements for the named person to have specific qualifications? How are they going to decide if someone is acceptable to fulfill this role?
I can pick that one up as well.
Thanks,
yeah,
Sharon.
the new it's a real mouthful. We're shortening it to responsible person, but the PRRC, the person responsible for regulatory compliance. Yeah, the new regulations actually define, so in the IVDR it's Article 15. It defines a whole load of responsibilities for the PRRC. And there is now a guidance document that's being issued. So the MDCG, which is the Commission's expert group that oversights and provides guidance documents, they have issued a document a little while ago now. So if you look on the Commission website, document MDCG 2019-7, and that defines what the types of, not specific qualification, but the types of training, the types of experience, knowledge, expertise that person needs to have.
Fabulous, thank you. My company wants training that is bespoke to us. Can this be offered?
Yes, absolutely. We can make it bespoke whilst ensuring we're not offering consultancy. What we would do is we would speak to the customer, put them in touch with our tutor, and we have the capability to develop any training that's needed within an organisation.
Fabulous, thanks, Kelly. We've got another question here. It's about the training. I've only got one person that needs a training. Do you run open courses for IVDR?
Yes, we do. We will have a plan in place for each month's courses. We tend to work 6 months in advance, and if anybody wants to get in touch using my email on this slide, then I can send them the dates.
Brilliant, thank you, Kelly. Got another one down here. Will SGS be designated as an IVDR notified body?
Probably I can take up Freddie.
Okay.
Yeah, SGS is already for many years an accredited certification body for ISO 13485 and a notified body for MDD and IVDD previously, and as our SGS Finland is already designated for MDR, so we are in the very, very final stages of gaining designations from the EU Commission. Yeah, and then once we complete the MDR, then we aim to complete IVDR as soon as possible.
Fantastic, thanks, Maddie. Will ISO 13485 become a harmonised standard for IVDR as it isn't yet for MDR or IVDR?
Right, I can take it up as well. So yes, it's a very good question. Basically, yeah, it is almost certain that 13485 will become a harmonized standard. Basically, the MDR and IVDR work on the same principle of harmonized standards in Article 8, as was the directives. And then the Commission's MDCG working group on standards is currently progressing, and generally takes 2 to 3 years to potentially finalize, and probably we expect that by around 2024.
Fantastic. I think we've just about got enough time for one more question. So this one is, where can I find more information on the new classification rules for IVD devices?
I can pick that one up, Freddie. So the classification rules, the new rules, are in obviously the IVDR itself. So Annex 8 of the regulation has all of the new classification rules, and that includes both the implementing rules and the device classification rules. Again, there is now a guidance document available from the Commission. It was published at the end of last year, so November 2020, and that's the guidance document on classification under IVDR. And it's reasonable. It gives actual examples, which is always helpful, and explanations on how the rules are going to be applied. So again, that's on the Commission's medical device portal under guidance documents, and that one is called MDCG 2020-16. So on the SGS website, we provide information ourselves, and we provide links as well to some of these key websites for you to find.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for that, Sharon. Well, that's us. We're just about out of time. So I'd like to thank all our presenters, Kelly, Maddie and Sharon, for your time today. And thank you to everybody for attending. I will make sure that the copy of the slides and the recording does go out to everybody, along with any other of the questions that we've not had time to answer. So thank you for joining our webinar, and we hope to speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.